Hello, you beautiful people out there, and welcome to the Banners Gaming Ahead of the Curve. This is where World of Warcraft players talk about World of Warcraft and all Blizzard games. Let's go. Hi, my name is Kima Sabix. I am GM of Clowns.
And my name is Wisdom. I'm the raid leader of Clowns.
I'm Naomi. I'm a Raider in Clowns, and I'm the editor of yours truly, the Banner Podcast.
And welcome. Let's go over 6.2.3. We went over it last time. There's a couple things that we did not have time to go over. So let's start with some class changes.
Overall, it looks like we're seeing some buffs all around. We've got stuff for Death Knights, Druids, Pallies, Shamans, and Warriors. Overall, it's nothing game-changing. I don't think that you're going to see any real shift in the specs that people are playing, and I think it's a nice sort of effort of rebalancing, but it's not going to be make or break. You're not going to see people stacking DKs or Druids, things like that, just because of these changes. You're going to be doing it for utility reasons, if at all. So, it's a nice quality of life thing for a few people, but I don't think it's going to be tremendously different.
New guild rule. Everybody has to be a Destruction Warlock. Just mass destruction. That should be an achievement, killing anything with all Destruction Warlocks.
I'd go the Boomkin route.
Just take the most gutted spec and be like, go try to kill something with this. Achievement. Yes. And maybe for the mount, you can just ride all the sad faces of all the Warlocks. Like, they just take every Warlock's face when they saw their class changes and just, like, Photoshop it around a mount. And you can just ride that. I'm sorry, Warlocks, I love you.
Spectacular. I mean, it'd look awful, but it's a fun idea.
Now, from somebody with my perspective, I play at a fairly high level, but I don't know every class and I don't analyze it nearly as well as Wisdom does. I see, when I read the patch notes, increased. All I see is increases. I know, common sense says that they don't give a damn about balancing, anything before Legion, just like in Siege of Orgrimmar when the class changes came out before Warlords, everything was kind of wonky because it was all focused towards Legion. But in your opinion, this doesn't really affect many classes as far as...
No, I mean, this isn't a pre-patch level change. We may see some really big rebalancing when we get patch 7.0, but that's going to be the pre-release event, and we're not going to see that for months and months. So at the time we're at right now, it's just some nice things to make people more competitive, right? It's trying to push everybody closer to that median and that middle damage mark that you're really looking to have everybody be right up against. You don't want people to be too overbalanced. You don't want people to be too nerfed. So it's just trying to kind of keep people where they're supposed to be. I think it's actually a good mark by Blizzard to show that they're still putting some effort into keeping an eye on balance and tuning. I don't really know what kind of an impact this will have on the PvP scene. Again, that's not my area of expertise, but I can tell you right now that it's not going to have unholy Death Knights rolling over to Frost and things like that. It's just not going to be that big of a deal.
Okay. Sound logic.
All right, so let's take a minute to talk about Legion. We got into a lot of the big changes that we were going to be seeing last week, but we have some more ground to cover today. Right out of the... What?
You forgot our awesome Legion music. NQ Legion music in 3, 2, 1. And go!
Right out of the gate here, we want to talk about Demon Hunters, but not so much the class as the specs. Now, we've seen that they're going to have two distinct specializations, but even that's not what we're going to be focusing on here. In the current setup, with the dual spec that's available to everybody, if you were interested in playing a Demon Hunter, you could have access to 100% of your specs, right? You could have one for tanking, one for DPS. You could stack two of each kind if that was really what you wanted to be doing. But you would have access to every single form that the Demon Hunter comes in, which is something that we don't have right now for any other class, right? You can get 2 of the 3 for most of your classes, and Druids are stuck at halfway there because they're special snowflakes. But we got some exciting news at BlizzCon. Everybody's going to be able to pick up every spec that's available to their class if they so desire. Personally, I'm excited about this. Windwalker is something that I have liked to dabble in the past, but it's not something that my raid has ever really needed me to do, so I've always had the gear specs for, or rather the gear sets for other specs. I think that this is a smart move because it lets people play whatever they want, and at a high-end level, it lets people choose, do I want 2 tank specs and a DPS spec, just to make it easy and save on tomes, or am I going to be the kind of person who wants to be able to master every single role and be able to play it perfectly if that's what I need to be able to do tonight? So I think it's a smart move, and I like what they're doing. It doesn't seem like it's going to be particularly harmful to the game.
Coming from somebody who, like, my whole career, with the exception of Legion, because I'm playing a hunter in Legion, I'm doing something for me. My whole career of Warcraft, when I was in a guild, generally speaking, or making a guild after vanilla, after BC, I would always play a tank or healer to, perform one of the key roles. And when I was a druid, I would do both. And I always wanted to make sure the group had what it needed to get going. Now, going back to the trainer, unlearning Resto, grabbing Feral or Boomkin, and then coming back was just too much of a pain in the butt to be bothered with for the slight chance of needing it. So now, like, I play mostly right now a Mistweaver and a tank. It would be nice on those farm nights just to have an option of, hey, we have enough healers, let's just switch it up tonight. Your spec's right there. The gear is generally right there. Okay, maybe I have some bonus armor on some of my DPS gear because it's my 3rd spec. But it still lets me, on farm content, be able to do something different that I wouldn't be allowed to do before. Now, Wisdom made a wonderful point pre-show, which I never made the connection of. I think everybody was too happy with, oh yeah, we got tri-spec or quad-spec. But I'll let you explain this one, because this was your little thought bubble.
Well, like I was saying before, if we keep the system the way that it is and Demon Hunters come out, they're going to be pretty popular because you'll be able to play every single spec that they have with just a dual spec, right? It's only 2 specs, and you can only play 2 right now. But by opening it up, it's a bit of a balance thing, really, where they let everybody play whatever spec they want and have access to all of the specs, just like the Demon Hunters do in the existing model. Now, whether this will be ridiculously expensive, like dual specking used to be, or whether it'll be nice and cheap the way it is today, I don't know, but it'll be something to keep an eye out for on the beta.
I mean, fans been asking for this for a long time, so I just never made the connection of maybe they're doing it because of Demon Hunters to keep everything fair. And I thought that was a great point.
Now, there's one big pushback inside the community that I think warrants some note. Everything I've read before, because I've been looking for this for several years now, is that it puts unwanted pressure onto players who play hybrids like monks or paladins to be able to play every single spec and to play it well, and even have the gear for it. And I mean, that's a little bit unrealistic for some people, and it's unwanted pressure, but I don't think it's actually going to be that big of a deal, right? It's not like you ever have someone who it would be great if they could switch from tank to healer or something like that. And instead of, just throwing your hands up like we do now and saying, oh, well, I guess you can't do that. No one ever says, well, go back to the city and change specs for us, The only time I think we've ever run into that kind of a problem that I can remember is when we've had too many healing priests in the raid, and we've had 2 people come in as disc and one needs to go sub out for holy. But even in that case, we've only had them do it because they had the gear for it and they knew how to play it. I would much rather have someone who only knows how to play 2 specs and play them well, rather than have someone who plays 3 specs subpar.
And I think the 3 spec thing, too, is also going to be more of a function of enjoyment for the player. I mean, as a raid leader and, as a guild leader, when we're in a raid and we're on progression, we will use one of our hybrid, like druids who tank or DPS, or excuse me, or heal or DPS. When we, like, say they mainly DPS, we give them, gear to heal, but we don't love going to that healing option because they're less geared than other players, because the main healers who always heal will get that first and he'll get the DPS gear first. That being said, as much as we're like, sometimes we have to because we're missing a healer, I have a hard time seeing a third step to that where, we're going to ask somebody for progression to do what they have gear for third best to go and do something like that as far as pressure. Maybe in the Mythic Guild scene, or I don't know, maybe other guilds run it differently. Maybe they'll ask that, but it just doesn't seem like something that we'd be jumping at the bit to do based just on a gear level. Make sense?
Yeah, and I think that even in a mythic level, it's actually going to be more railroaded, not less. Of course, I'm not speaking from too much experience here, but I would imagine that, you're going to get your hands on players who are extremely good at tanking or healing or DPSing, and you're going to see less of the go-between. I mean, sure, the people who play very well can pick up and learn and be very good at different specializations, but it doesn't change the fact that even for someone who prefers to play like a main spec marksman, they're going to be better at that than they are at survival, even though it's functionally the same role.
So apparently, I did not pay my tip at the table for Hearthstone, and they kicked me out. I guess no loitering is their motto over here. Man, oh man, they're jerks. Anyway, yes, I understand that point, but on the same point, this is also the people who go 20 boomkins to get a certain fight done. So if they're willing to go to that level, maybe not. I don't know. Should be interesting.
Yeah, I think we'll see it play out however it decides to play out. But I like what they're doing, at least at this point.
Me too. It's definitely a nice change, and especially leveling process and all that will be, benefit from that, I'm sure.
Yeah.
One thing I want to touch on quickly is the Demon Hunter's mobility. Some people have been really concerned about it being overpowered in PvE and especially in PvP.
I don't see how that could be a problem, because just like with any other class unique mobility, it gives that class an extra bump. So that's like saying that hunters are overpowered because they have deterrence, or disengage throws them 15 feet backward. I just don't see how that could be a problem.
As well as rogues, they could be invisible through the whole thing. Druids can self-heal themselves and be invisible. There's a lot of things that you could say is overpowered. It's just the new flavor of the month, and everybody's really critical about the new class.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think it's going to be a tremendously big deal. I mean, you look at the way that some of the different raids are made. Blackrock Foundry in particular stands out to me. There's a lot of invisible walls where even with a double jump, I don't think you'd be able to get over staircase banisters and things like that. I don't think you'd really end up finding your way through any different sections any easier. And when we're talking about how it pertains to actual fights, you look at something like Cormrock, Cromog from
You love
Black
messing
Rock.
that fight up.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's 4 fights that sound the same. What are you gonna do? Cromog, where we had everybody get thrown up into the air periodically, and several different classes found ways to not care about the mechanic, right? I mean, different classes have different ways to deal with fall damage as it is, and I don't think that it's going to be tremendously game breaking unless we have an entire fight that takes place in the air or something like that. It strikes me that other classes can get to other places more quickly, and double jump isn't going to ruin that for them.
Yeah,
Also, you'll have to excuse me. There's a storm in the background, so if you hear any big wind gusts or I get blown out of my shot, that's because that's what I get for living in Seattle.
Yeah, I mean, I feel if Blizzard, does the art and the design right, double jump they can make very convenient and fun, and glide convenient and fun in a world questing environment, and have some perks somewheres, but they can make stuff in PvP where that double jump still wouldn't get you over that one hump that would be overpowered, where a regular jump would do the same thing.
Double jump. Let's talk challenge modes. Previously in Warlords of Draenor, I was uncomfortable with playing challenge modes because I'm very intimidated by, disappointing somebody having to do something over and over again because of something silly that I did. So I'm uncomfortable being a medium skilled player in a very stressful environment. So I haven't thus far been able to indulge in challenge modes. Moving forward, Blizzard is going to make it enjoyable for both my type of player and for the high-end player who can't wait to push it to its limits. I'm very excited about that moving forward.
And, I've got a bit of a different take on it. I'm excited for some of the changes we're going to see. I think it'll be interesting to have some kind of variation where it's not just a consistent route. But really overall, I'm a little bit concerned because you look at what they've done with things like tourist mode. You look at what they did recently with normal and Hellfire Citadel, where they just decided to pull whole mechanics. And really, what's getting me about this is the loss of cosmetic rewards. I'm not super excited. I mean, I like the idea of having the content be more accessible, and in an upcoming video series, TM soon, TM, we will be showing you guys our run through the current Warlords challenge modes. But it strikes me that it's not as difficult as a lot of people make it out to be, and I don't just say that because I feel like I'm good at it and I didn't have to try very hard or something like that. The first set of golds I did this time around in Warlords of Draenor, I did with a group through Open Raid. I was a tank, I went in there pretty much blind. I'd watched a few videos, but I wasn't super familiar with the concept, and really the only framework I had were the Mists rounds of challenge modes, which were not tuned to be extremely difficult. Certainly, stacking these that we have in Warlords against those in Mists, these are dramatically more difficult. And one of the things that got emphasized in that group that I really enjoyed was that the healer, who was consistent, and one of the DPS who was also consistent, they didn't want to play with someone who had done all of the challenge modes already and was good enough to do them. They were much more interested in playing with someone who was willing to learn with them. Because they hadn't done them before. They wanted to go through and see how hard it was for them. They felt like they were going to be skilled enough that they could make the timers, and even if it was very tight sometimes, we did manage to get an entire set of gold medals. So I don't think that it's as terribly difficult as people make it out to be, especially now. Now, I understand that what pulls a lot of people into challenge modes is that they're looking for those cosmetic rewards, especially the weapons or the armor that we had last time around. But it strikes me that it's already tuned so that it already comes in different difficulty flavors. You have bronze, which rewards a title for people who don't really want to try that hard. You can afford to wipe a bunch of times. You can wait for your cooldowns to come up. You don't have to use invisibility potions or even pre-bots to get through that and get a bronze time with a ridiculous cushion. You can do silver for a mount, which is quite nice, and that requires a little bit more trial and error. I mean, in the practice runs that we did for our challenge mode golds, we got silver fairly consistently, and that was our first time going in blind, talking through individual pulls, mechanics, setting up interrupt orders, all those kinds of things. And then for the people who want to do gold, once you really get your act together, especially for a good group of people, I mean, we had some very high DPS, we had an extremely good healer, and I feel like I did a pretty decent job tanking those. We ended with 4 minutes of cushion on some of these things on our second run through. I mean, it just gets a little bit silly when you really start to coordinate.
Can I pause you on your point? Do you mind?
Yeah.
So you're saying that, it's already tailored to have different skill levels. Like people who could do bronze should go in there and do bronze. Now, hopefully, maybe I'll be proven wrong on air. Let me prove you wrong. Now, Janine, does going to all 8 dungeons, doing a practice run through, finding a group, doing a practice runs, and getting it, like there's no doubt you could get it with the bronze timer, doing all of that for a title sound better than going through with a group, going until your group skill level can't keep up, so you're going with adequate people that's around your skill level, getting relevant gear rewards, and then calling it a day? What sounds more fun? Doing all of that for a title and an achievement, which some people could care less about, or doing it for adequate gear rewards that's going to reward you in raid, and doing it with a group? It's like, hey, we're all around medium skill level, we're going to go until we bust.
I've never ever really cared about achievements and titles, so I'm going to go with gear. I definitely would prefer going into a raid feeling more equipped than with the title over my head.
Because that takes a long time just to get bronze, just to get the gold, just to get a team together, make sure they're committed to doing all the dungeons, doing a practice run. Because remember, on our skill level we got bronze on the first try regardless, and then once we practiced a little bit, we got gold. People who have, like, say, half the skill that we do would not maybe get bronze on the first run, so they'd have to put the same amount of effort and work in that we did to get that bronze.
I think that you could afford to run through with with a group of people who are coming out of heroic dungeon level gear and go into those and get bronze relatively easily. I There isn't really a skill requirement for that. And the point I was trying to make with my earlier story is that the people that we ended up with through Open Raid, they were not amazingly talented people. I mean, yes, that I will continually vote for the healer I had through those runs. Summerleaf, he did a fantastic job. But, some of our DPS was subpar, some of our routes were kind of weird. Every once in a while, we made mistakes. I made a bunch of mistakes that made it hard to get through these things.
You just called 3 of your people in your group subpar, so I already know that this video is getting 3 dislikes right off the bat.
This is
I'm just playing.
intimidated.
I'm sure that they're all going to watch. But really the point that he was trying to make in leading those runs, because that was Summerleaf's baby, more than anything else, he was demonstrating that, you don't have to be phenomenally skilled. You can just go in there and put some time in and you can get the best rewards that are available. Now, I like the sort of cultural shift that they're aiming to make here, where you can take 5 people, half of your 10-man team, and say, hey, let's go do a challenge mode tonight because we're short some people or something like that. I like that it's turning into a casual, let's go try it kind of activity, which you don't see now, right? You don't really see pickup groups or anything like that in LFG. It's hard to find them in OQ, or excuse me, not OQ, Open Raid. You just don't see a lot of that kind of content, and I like that it's going to be more popular, but at the same time, losing those beautiful cosmetic rewards, I think that's a mistake. I like one of the best suggestions I've heard about the system that they are suggesting for Legion is that they leave challenge modes as they are untouched with bronze, silver, and gold times, yet they make all of the changes they want to make and put them in mythic dungeons to make them harder instead.
Now, hold up one second, because I was under the impression, unless I heard wrong, that the entry level challenge modes will all be for gear, and it'll get gear based on how far you go. But the really high end levels will still have cosmetic rewards, the equivalent of what the challenge modes are now.
There's some rumor about that. What I think is sort of slated to happen is that you will get an artifact skin. And that can be cool, but if it's not a good enough particular skin, I'm not going to care. And if they don't change the transmog rules for artifacts at the end of the expansion, letting me turn my artifact, or rather any old weapon, to look like my artifact weapon, then I won't care about it because it'll only be something that's around for an expansion. Whereas right now, it doesn't matter what gear I'm wearing, it can look like I just finished my, my Mists challenge modes. I can use my Warlord's enormous shiny blue polearm all the time. That's not something that they can take away. But if it's just an artifact weapon skin and the transmog rules for that never change, then that's one expansion's worth of content, and that's not something I'm really super interested in.
Well, I understand your point. One thing they did say is that they are going to allow you to transmog your legendary weapon into a different weapon. They made a point to say if you're crazy, because they're going to look so cool, but they are going to do that. But I mean, I can understand why they won't let you transmog that later on. I mean, for everybody just to always have these legendary weapons on them, I like it staying in Legion because that lets them go above and beyond the most craziest art conceptions physically possible. Although I do understand your point, so I think maybe some unique mount rewards would be better than yes, put a weapon in there, a way we could change it, but put something, make sure you put something tangible that you can always use no matter what expansion, like a special mount or
armor sets, I think, is maybe something that they're missing right now because they've only had one set of armor sets so far. And I know that there's plenty of people who didn't get their challenge modes in Mists, either because they started playing later, they skipped the expansion, or because they couldn't afford a carry or they weren't just good enough to do it themselves. And for those people, I think they really want those sets, right? They see them and they really do want to be able to wear them. I see that with my alts a lot where, if I'm playing a Death Knight or something like that, I'd love to have my hands on those sets. I just didn't even have the characters created at the time. So, I think that if they offer up another armor set variation, that could be really nice. Either something to mix and match or just an entirely new overhaul. I just think that they need to sell it in a way that'll keep the current crowd interested, because the way they're doing it now, you're going to lose the people who do it now and you're going to get the people who don't do it now. And I don't think that that's a fair trade-off to the people who've been doing it for 2 expansions.
Personally, I agree with Wisdom. I feel like if they don't have a better reward for people of his style of playing, then they're going to lose a lot of people that play challenge modes now. They're going to gain a lot of people like me, but they're going to lose a lot of people like, them.
Them people. Them.
I appreciate that. A part of what concerns me so much is that given how badly the population of people who do challenge modes now are outnumbered by the people who don't, they may say, well, we don't care about you because you're such a small minority, and so we're going to lose all of the reasons why we do the challenge modes now.
Blizzard, I trust you. I think you will do it great, and I think you will make it so we still get these kind of rewards and everybody can participate. Although I will say one thing, Blizzard, I am pissed off at you because putting those things in like the bloodlust, for those who don't know, challenge modes every week are going to have a different little unique twist to them. Whether the two examples they showed were once you kill something, it blows up. Once everything gets
excited for that.
Well, I'm glad you are. Once you get to 30%, everything enrages, which means you should single target more. I love it, although I know it is going to cause fights between me and Naomi. Going to be like, stop AoEing everything. And she'd be like, oh, I forgot it's at 30%, and then we're going to be dying. And it's going to cause a fight. So thank you, Blizzard, for causing relationship issues with your game. Thank you.
This has been an ongoing problem.
The pulsing dungeon-wide constant ticking damage, I'm not looking forward to that. I'm not envious of my healer when we end up getting that flavor of the week.
I can handle it. As long as they don't make Mistweavers as terrible in dungeon scenarios as they do now.
So, now let's take a minute to talk about the changes we are seeing in Overwatch. Alright, now here is a great thing that I think Blizzard is doing. Bundling the access to the open beta into pre-orders. I mean, it's not anything new, but I like to see it. I would be hopeful that they would do something like that for Legion, though we're going to talk about Overwatch. I think that it's a smart move, and it's going to get people engaged, right? It's going to let people see, how do I like to play, what do I want to be doing, and that way, if they end up doing a hard reset when the beta's over, people will know what track they want to take to get back to where they used to be. They might find a hero that really fits well with them, and it gives people a chance to play around with everything under the sun without affecting MMR ratings and things like that, which I'm sure will be a pretty big factor in Overwatch like it is in Heroes.
Now, they introduced 3 new heroes, Genji, Mei, and Diva. Now, each of these heroes are bringing unique things to the game. However, one thing I found very interesting is Genji's backstory. They went into it and talked about how him and his brother used to work for their father used to own like this kind of crime syndicate, and Genji was the younger brother who kind of goofed off and didn't want to be a part of it. And then Hanzo came in when the father died, and the gang was like, hey, we got to get your brother involved. Let's go. They fought each other. Hanzo killed Genji. So he thought. Overwatch picked him up, repaired him, saved his life, and now he works for Overwatch, pretty much against the forces of evil. Now, there's more detail than that, but they're really expanding on, each character's backstory. They're making they're saying comic book kind of style. I don't know how they're doing it, but they're doing backstories on every single character, really nice and fleshed out, whether it be comic book, little CGI things. We'll see. But my question is, now I am not a huge FPS gamer, but when I see like Counter-Strike come out, one game a year, all this kind of stuff, here Overwatch is really, really taking a lot of time to go in all these backstories and really develop the world of Overwatch for one video game. Now, I feel like this is much more than other companies put into their games. As far as backstory and massive character development for a massive amount of characters.
Do you think that's a bad thing?
No, I think it's a good thing.
No, that's a great thing.
Yeah, but does it seem like they're possibly setting themselves up in the future for something more? And I don't know what that would be, but there's a difference between Blizzard high quality and them just spending massive amount of time and money to expand the stories on every single character.
I actually think that it makes a fair amount of sense. I think that the biggest competitor they have in terms of other games that will fight for the player base that Overwatch will be going for, is going to be something like Destiny. And if you look at the critical reception to Destiny around its launch, the crippling lack of story was really something that dragged a lot of players down. And they're doing some things to rectify that, although this is a Blizzard show, so we're not going to talk about that too much. But it doesn't change the fact that starting off on a really high note is going to be a strong point for players to feel like they are engaged, because they're known for really deep story driven games like Warcraft RTS and World of Warcraft. And those are the things that you can spend hours just seeing what the story's like. You know, you play through the campaign and things like that. And so taking the time to develop that and make sure that there is a backstory that's going to be meaningful. You know, they didn't really have to do all of that heavy lifting for something like Heroes of the Storm, because they were picking on characters that they had already taken the time to develop. We already knew who Raynor was, Cho'Gall, those kinds of characters. That wasn't something that required refreshment. So now that they're taking the time to build into really the very core opening story who these people are, I think it's going to get a lot more people interested and engaged in the story as they're setting it up.
As you know, I'm huge on storylines, so I'm very excited about Overwatch. Even watching the trailer, I was like, oh, she has a really, what was her name, Tracer? She has a really quirky attitude, and I thought that was really cool, and that makes me want to play a game. So I was really excited about that.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but Destiny was supposed to be a pay per month game.
Not once it got far enough out of development. I mean, they changed the model a couple times. It was originally supposed to be, I think, like a Warcraft style pay per month MMO. But when they set up their giant 10-year development plan, a little bit later on, I think, I mean, clearly it has been changed. I don't know when that happened exactly, but
I am fairly confident to say it was changed because of the lack of support for the game. People got in, they didn't like how certain things were. Just like any MMO that tries to compete with Warcraft, starts out with pay monthly, and then goes down to, okay, we're going to be free but do transactions, because they can't sustain that.
Well, right, I mean, we're going after a different market.
We're not talking about another show.
Well, no, my point being, my point being is that Blizzard has no plan to make us pay monthly. Destiny put all that time and effort into FPS for them to be a monthly subscription game, and they didn't even put enough effort in the storyline. Blizzard's putting more effort in the storyline, and from the beginning not have any intention of making us pay per month.
So do you think they're going to change it?
I mean, they could announce the game for $60 and then a monthly fee. I guess that could be a possibility. But it also is a little different than Destiny, though. It's not like an open world either.
Well, Destiny, I don't think is super open world. I mean, you have fairly restricted into individual sections. It's not nearly as open world as something like Warcraft.
I don't know. My point, just on a side note, it just seems like they're putting a lot of effort in. So if it is just for the game, I'm very excited. If not, I think in the back of their head, they might have something else planned. So we'll see. These Hearthstone guys freaking hate me. Why won't you just let me sit there for a little bit? That's all I want to do is just relax on the hearth, and you got to bust my chops. Why? I don't understand. I've angered the dwarfs. But going on to the new characters, how do you guys really feel about them? I mean, there are some game changers like Mei who can freeze opponents, not only freeze opponents, but she can uplift her opponents with ice to get to certain, obstacles that they couldn't get to. And there's also D.Va, who is in a robot. Her backstory is that she's a gamer, and she's in a robot, and she gets in and out of the robot as she goes along, and that kind of, I don't know how they're going to actually work that. It might be two different health or armor settings. I don't know. And then you got Genji, who is, he's probably one of my favorites, the badass samurai. I always had a love for samurais and samurai animes and stuff like that. So I'm excited for it.
I think it's going to look pretty interesting. I mean, I think that diversity is always going to be super important in these kinds of games, not making people feel like they are just playing differently skinned versions of the same class. That's always disappointing. So I think that it's a smart move, and I like that the way that they're doing it. It does make a lot of sense, and there's not one in particular that's really captured my heart yet, but I think that as we get a chance to sit down, I mean, I haven't bought into the beta myself, but when I decide to do something like that, it's going to be nice to figure out exactly what playstyle I want to be fitting into. Now, whether or not they can balance it, that's a whole different story.
Well, I think they're capping at 21, so whatever happens, they just have 21, and then they'll probably, I don't know how they're going to do DLC, but I'm sure they already have a plan. I'm excited though. That's going to be an awesome esport.
Will you be playing beta, you think?
Oh, I'm already on the list to sign up.
Oh, are you?
I'm just waiting for the
open.
open.
You usually don't play beta.
No, I don't normally play beta. I don't like beta as far as Warcraft is concerned because I don't like the story being ruined or doing it twice. I like the uniqueness, but now that, I am running a podcast, I will be doing all the betas to keep everybody up to date with how all the development is going.
Cool.
Yeah, buddy. Let's talk about Heroes of the Storm. Now, they've added a couple heroes. The first Overwatch hero is going to be added, Tracer. What? You think I'm funny? You think
No, I thought you were doing another introduction, so I started dancing.
Well, all right.
Yay, blooper.
So Tracer's gonna be the first non-Overwatch hero that we have, or the first Overwatch hero that we have in the Heroes of the Storm. They didn't release a lot of information yet, but I assume it's going to be something about a very mobile class, I would assume, playing on her trades. Some of the bigger news, though, is Cho'Gall. Cho'Gall is going to be awesome. It actually was released today. It's a hero that is controlled by two people. Now, this brings teamwork to a whole new level. So how they're releasing Cho'Gall is everybody who has a BlizzCon ticket, virtual or regular, will automatically have Cho'Gall added to their account. In order for other people to get Cho'Gall, they have to play 2 games with that person who has Cho'Gall and win 2 games. And then Cho'Gall will be an added character to them. So I did buy, obviously, a BlizzCon ticket, and a lot of people are asking me and texting me, even as we're doing the show right now, hey, let's Cho'Gall, let's Cho'Gall, let's Cho'Gall. Now, once that person wins 2 games, they get it. Once I win 4 games of Cho'Gall, I get some bonus gold, which is nice.
Can we Cho'Gall?
No.
I like that this is looking a little bit like Archon mode. Now, that's something that we're not going to have time to talk about today, but it is something that's a part of the new StarCraft expansion. It lets 2 people work together cooperatively over 1 player. I know that Kimo and I are going to get into a lot of fights about this, so that'll be fun. One of the things that relates to Tracer a little bit, in his mobility, I'm curious on kind of on a meta level, how much we're seeing a transition towards global abilities. One of our upcoming heroes, Artanis, he's a tank right now, but he is set to have 2 abilities that are going to be global. Both of his ults will work from anywhere, and I think that we're going to see something similar with Tracer. We've seen some heroes work that way in the past. I mean, Rexxar is kind of an exception to the rule, but I think it's an interesting transition, and I think it's really going to change how the older heroes stack up against the new ones. So I'm excited for Cho'Gall, but I am kind of curious to see how this shift is going to go and if we're going to see too many people only playing the new heroes, because that's really the only thing that becomes viable when, you can medevac people all the way across the map, 4 or 5 people, or when you've got abilities that can hit from anywhere. How do you react to that,
Now, does our sleepy editor, who was up till 4 a.m. editing, have anything to say on the heroes?
I don't think that Cho'Gall is a good idea. That's not something that I would play. Having 2 people, I guess I'll have to see it, but having 2 people run the same character sounds really overcomplicated to me.
Well, I think that Blizzard is doing a great job with always expanding the box. We see heroes like the Lost Vikings where 1 player plays 3, and now we're seeing heroes like Cho'Gall where, 2 people play 1. It's interesting that they're coming up with all these cool, unique takes while still keeping it fair. When I'm watching a lot of these Heroes of the Storms, yes, there's more classes you see than others, but there's not where there's always the same comps. Everybody finds different comps, finds different ways to use different comps, and I really like that that's still being kept fair, while really thinking outside the box. Now, Cho'Gall will count as 2 people, even though it's one character. I wonder how it's going to work out with, like, okay, so when you have play with an Abathur, that's also kind of one less presence on the battlefield. How's it going to work with a Chagall and an Abathur where like there's going to be, okay, so there's going to be just, 3 heroes on the battlefield at all? It's going to be interesting to see what combinations people come up with, but I really feel that I like the idea and I like where they're going with always making something different. Chagall, for example, there's a move around the lines of one person throws a ball, the other person has to use the explosion ability. One person moves him, one person uses the physical attacks, one person uses the magic, and combining them to do more damage. Because essentially how they explain it is each person's abilities are the same strength as a regular hero, so combining it and being in the same place is really effective. So if you happen to kill a Chagall, you're going to feel really damn good. But if you're a Chagall wrecking people, you're going to feel really damn good. You're going to feel like a powerful raid boss. So I like the back and forth. And, me personally playing Chagall with like Wisdom and my other friends is going to be really fun, I think, for the first couple weeks, because the people who don't know about Chagall, like people who aren't in the know and just play heroes casually, are going to...
They're going to be like, what?
Yeah, they're going to be like, I'm going to try to kill this hero, not knowing that we have the power of 2 men, and we're just going to stomp, and it's going to be a lot of fun.
I could see how that would be really cool. I guess I'll have to visualize it. I mean, I guess I'll have to see it. I'm a very visual person.
So. Yeah.
Well, now that you've taken all of my talking points, I'm curious when we're going to see a Voltron, right? Where we get all 5 people to either, mix and match to be different, more powerful heroes, or how far we're going to see the Chagall concept taken. I think it's an interesting first step, but I'm curious to see if they'll take it even further.
I feel like now is just like your trend. Every episode, you give Blizzard a great idea, like send checks to Wisdom, like that would.
I'm just gonna put the PO box down at the bottom.
But we're gonna get into the arena mode another episode. But as far as the new battleground, I really really like it. The Headless Horseman, bringing that into Heroes is pretty cool. I don't have a lot more to say on that. I like the idea and I like the concept of the battleground.
You love the Headless Horseman. I remember when I first started dating you were like, there's this really cool mount in World of Warcraft and it's called the Headless Horseman, and I'm like, whatever.
And I still don't have it.
Yes.
I think that the map variation is always a good thing, though. I like that they're theming it after different games. So I think it'll be interesting to see if we get kind of a StarCraft theme map where you can actually play with some of the buildings and things like that, or if that'll actually make a difference, and if we might see genuine game mode differences, kind of like a CTF kind of game style, or King of the Hill.
That would be really cool.
The other 2 heroes we didn't really go over much that we do know more information is Lunera and Greymane. Now, Lunera seems like a very mobile hero. She's bouncing back and forth. She's a centaur, I believe it's called, throwing spears and doing different things. I really like the idea of the mobile classes, and more than that, Greymane is presented as a melee. In title, it's a ranged assassin, but the way they explained it is he's going to have werewolf form, where it's melee, and he's going to have ranged form when he uses a gun. So it's like a hybrid of everything, and I'm really curious how they're going to make that work. But again, expanding the box of what is currently there. They just keep expanding and expanding, and I'm curious to see what other crazy ideas they're going to come up with in the future.
This is the positive Blizzard segment.
I hope that they balance Greymane properly so that you don't just spend all your time in one form or all your time in the other. Or that, they even give you the options to build between, do I want to be a wolf all the time or do I want to be shooting people, Because if you look at something that's a little bit similar, we talked about Rexar earlier, but it serves as a good reference point. You don't really have a super viable way of building for the hunter. Really, you always build for the bear, at least in my experience, because who doesn't want to have a fire bear? But, if it's not done right, it's going to feel one-sided. So I hope that they play it out the way that it would make it most enjoyable.
I would personally like to see something like when you're in wolf mode, you take maybe more damage, but you can do more damage. And when you're kind of back, you're maybe have some slowing attacks with the gun, but it's less damage. So it's kind of like a trapping / hybrid attack but when you attack, there's also more risk of damage. I don't know. Something creative to differentiate both specs. But that's just me. Now, there is obviously a lot more Blizzard news and a lot more things to get into, which we will do in the next episodes. Look forward to the Banner Gaming's Ahead of the Curve episodes every Wednesday to our stream. Please like, comment, and subscribe if you like our videos. And if you like the art, please check out the artist link below. Also, I would really like to hear your comments on the story development as far as Overwatch and what they're putting into what is just a one-time sale FPS game. Do you think it's too much? Is it normal? I'm really curious to see the audience's feedback on this, so please let me know.
We want to hear what you think.
Yes.
All of us.
Even wisdom. All right, everybody, that's about our time. There is much more Blizzard news for us to cover in other episodes. Look forward to a new Ahead of the Curve every Wednesday. This is Kima Sabix.
I'm Naomi.
And I've been Wisdom. Thank you all for coming, and we'll see you next time.
Bye-bye. And if you like to see us mess up 20,000 times, be sure to stay in tune for the bloopers at the end. Much love. Have a good night, beautiful people. Me messing up is not funny. Coming live to you from Compton, it's Wisdom! And then he's like super ultra white voice. What's up, guys? I hope everybody's having a splendid evening tonight.
Just give me just a second.
Yeah, you go tell those cops.
You're the dark side. Jeez, put a hood on that and you're basically ready to go for Palpatine. 2 expansions ago, we saw the introduction of challenge modes into the World of Warcraft universe.
Oh my god.
You're still not allowed to. I'm not taking risks.